Bodybuilding, at its peak, offered something most sports could not. The promise of transformation so complete it bordered on myth. The money followed. Sponsorships worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Prize pools large enough to alter a man's financial life entirely. As the stakes rose, so did the methods. Competitors began using every available substance that offered even marginal gains in size or definition. The results were undeniable. Records were broken. Careers were built. Legacies were cemented. But the physical cost of those careers only became fully visible after death, when autopsies documented what years of extreme drug use had done to the body from the inside. Number 10. Rich Piana. Rich Piana stood apart from most figures in professional bodybuilding. At a time when athletes routinely attributed their physiques to discipline, nutrition, and hard work, Piana spoke directly to his audience about steroid use. He told them plainly that building a body like his, weighing 290 pounds with arms measuring 23 inches, required steroids, and a great deal of them. That honesty earned him a following that had little to do with his competition record. He ran his own supplement brand, maintained millions of loyal followers, and built a public identity around scale, in his training, his meals, and his physical presence. In August 2017, Piana's girlfriend heard a loud thud from the bathroom. She found him unconscious and unresponsive on the floor. Paramedics arrived and restored a heartbeat, but he was transported to the hospital and placed in a medically induced coma. He remained there for 2 weeks, showing almost no brain activity as his organs deteriorated. His family made the decision to remove life support. Rich Piana was 46 years old. The circumstances surrounding his collapse added further detail to the picture. Police found 20 bottles of steroids at the scene, along with crushed white powder residue near his body. The autopsy found his heart had grown to nearly double the size of a normal adult heart. His liver showed severe damage consistent with prolonged use of performance-enhancing compounds. The official cause of death was sudden cardiac arrest resulting from an enlarged heart. Piana had spent years being public about what he was putting into his body. The autopsy confirmed what that had done to it. Number 9. Andreas Munzer. Andreas Munzer was known in competitive bodybuilding circles as the king of conditioning, a title that reflected an objective reality on stage. His muscularity was extreme, but what distinguished him was the degree to which subcutaneous fat had been eliminated. Muscle striations and vascularity were visible across his entire body. His body fat percentage was reported to have dropped below 3%. At that level of leanness, the body's basic functions are compromised. Fat plays a role in organ protection, neurological function, and cardiac health. Mentzer competed regardless. In 1996, during a guest posing appearance in Germany, he collapsed backstage with severe abdominal pain and signs of internal bleeding. He was taken to hospital, where surgeons operated immediately. What they found was extensive liver damage. The organ was covered in tumors and structurally compromised to the point of fragmenting during the procedure. His kidneys had already failed. His cardiovascular system was severely strained. Extreme dehydration had thickened his blood to the point where circulation was critically impaired. Emergency surgery and blood transfusions were unable to reverse the damage. Mentzer died on the operating table. He was 31 years old. The autopsy report documented a degree of multi-organ deterioration that medical examiners described as unlike anything they had previously encountered in a living patient. The damage was consistent with prolonged heavy use of diuretics, anabolic steroids, and other performance-enhancing compounds used to achieve competition-level conditioning. Number 8. Nassar El Sonbaty. Nassar El Sonbaty defied every assumption that came with his profession. People who met him expecting a bodybuilder found someone who spoke 7 languages, had studied history and sociology at university, and could hold his own in serious conversations about philosophy, politics, and science. His intellect was genuine and widely documented, which made his dedication to competitive bodybuilding all the more striking to those who encountered him. At his peak, Nassar weighed 315 pounds at 5 feet 11 inches tall, with a physique that many observers considered one of the most complete and balanced the sport had seen. In 1997, he finished second at the Mr. Olympia, losing to Dorian Yates by a narrow margin. The result remains contested. A significant number of people within the sport believed then and continue to believe that Nassar should have taken that title. On March 20, 2013, Nassar El Sonbaty died of acute heart and kidney failure. He was 47 years old. In the years before his death, those close to him noticed a marked change. A man known for his willingness to speak at length on almost any subject had stopped giving interviews, stopped making public appearances, and had withdrawn entirely from public life. The reason, as it later became known, was that his kidneys had been failing. He had been on dialysis for months, privately, away from public attention. His heart was under severe strain from years of sustained physical extremity. What distinguished Nassar's situation from many of his contemporaries was the depth of his awareness. He understood human physiology at a level comparable to trained medical professionals. He knew, in precise clinical terms, what prolonged use of steroids, growth hormone, and insulin were doing to his organs. He had stated as much. In one interview, he said, "I know what I'm doing. I accept the consequences." When he died, his body had accumulated dangerous levels of fluid retention. His kidneys had ceased filtering waste from his blood. His heart, which had spent years pumping blood through an exceptionally large and muscular frame, gave out entirely. Nassar El Sonbaty possessed an unusually clear understanding of the physiological costs of elite bodybuilding. That understanding did not protect him from those costs. Number 7. Dallas McCarver. Dallas McCarver was 26 years old when he died on August 22, 2017, standing 6 feet 1 inch and weighing over 300 pounds in the off-season. He was widely regarded as one of the sport's most promising competitors, referred to by many in bodybuilding circles as Big Country. That evening, McCarver was at home eating dinner when he began choking. His girlfriend attempted the Heimlich maneuver repeatedly without success and called 911. By the time paramedics arrived, he was already dead. The official cause of death was asphyxiation. The autopsy, however, documented a body under severe systemic strain. McCarver's heart weighed 690 grams, more than double the normal adult male range of 300 to 350 grams. His kidneys showed disease. His thyroid was malfunctioning. His testosterone levels were measured at more than 55 times the normal range. His liver had sustained serious advanced damage. The examining physicians noted that even without the choking incident, McCarver's cardiovascular system was in critical condition. Their assessment was that he likely had months to live, possibly only weeks. The autopsy also found evidence of multiple small heart attacks in the weeks prior to his death, indicating that cardiac deterioration had already been underway. At 26, his internal organs reflected the condition of someone in the advanced stages of heart disease. Dallas McCarver was considered a future champion of the sport. His body had already reached its limit. Number 5. Mike Mentzer. Mike Mentzer arrived in professional bodybuilding with a set of ideas that put him at odds with nearly everyone else in the sport. At a time when high-volume training, multiple hours a day, 6 days a week, dozens of sets per muscle group was standard practice, Mentzer advocated for the opposite. His system, which he called heavy-duty training, was built on the principle that intensity, not volume, was the primary driver of muscular development. He trained fewer days, fewer sets, and argued that the industry's conventional approach was not just inefficient, but actively counterproductive. Mentzer had studied philosophy and was heavily influenced by Ayn Rand's philosophy of reason. He applied that framework to exercise science with genuine rigor, rejecting received wisdom and demanding logical justification for every training variable. In 1979, his approach produced a result that had no precedent in the sport's history. At the Mr. Olympia prejudging, Mentzer received what many experts described as a perfect score, something no other competitor had achieved before or has achieved since. The following year did not go as he anticipated. At the 1980 Mr. Olympia, Mentzer did not place in the top 5. Arnold Schwarzenegger, returning from retirement, took first place in a result that remains one of the most disputed in the sport's history. Mentzer's response was not simply disappointment. By the accounts of those who knew him, the experience caused a profound psychological deterioration that he did not recover from. He left competitive bodybuilding and withdrew from public life. When he resurfaced in the 1990s, people who had known him were concerned by his condition. He appeared physically unwell, gaunt, with sunken eyes. Those closest to him described increasing paranoia and social isolation. He had become largely confined to his apartment, reliant on sleeping pills, and deeply distrustful of doctors and of the world around him. On June 10, 2001, Mike Mentzer died in his sleep at the age of 49. 2 days later, his brother Ray Mentzer, also a professional bodybuilder, died in the same house. The official cause of Mike's death was listed as heart complications. The fuller picture was grimmer. Mentzer had been living with serious heart disease for years. His arteries were severely clogged, his heart enlarged. His prescribed cardiac medication was reportedly found untouched on his kitchen counter. He had not sought treatment, not out of ignorance, but out of the mistrust and isolation that had come to define his final years. What distinguishes Mentzer's story is that the deterioration was not primarily physical in origin. The 1980 competition result appears to have been the breaking point, the moment from which the psychological unraveling began. The cardiac disease that ultimately killed him developed within a body that had by then already been abandoned by the person living inside it. His mind gave out before his heart did. Number 4. Franco Columbu. Franco Columbu occupied a singular place in the history of bodybuilding. At 5 feet 5 inches and 185 pounds on stage, he was physically smaller than nearly every competitor he stood beside. What he lacked in size, he compensated for with a level of strength that was, by any standard, extraordinary. Columbu won Mr. Olympia twice. He also competed in and won World's Strongest Man competitions. He deadlifted over 750 pounds and bench pressed 525 pounds. There is footage of him carrying a full-sized refrigerator up a flight of stairs on his back, and video of him inflating a hot water bottle with his lungs until it burst. He was not simply a bodybuilder. He was, by measurable standard, one of the strongest human beings alive at the time. He was also unusually disciplined in how he approached his health. Columbu became a licensed chiropractor. He studied the mechanics of the human body professionally. By the accounts of those who knew him, he was consistently moderate in his approach to supplementation, more careful, more restrained than most of his peers. For that reason, the people around him believed Franco Columbu would outlive them all. On August 30th, 2019, Columbu was swimming in the ocean near his home in California. He was 78 years old and had remained active throughout his retirement. His heart stopped without warning. Bystanders on the beach pulled him from the water. Paramedics responded quickly. He did not survive. What distinguishes Columbu's case from others on this list is precisely that he did not follow the patterns that ended other careers prematurely. He did not abuse drugs. He stayed active. He ate carefully, understood his physiology, and retired from competition in 1981. By every conventional measure, he had done what was necessary to protect his long-term health. The autopsy confirmed heart disease and arterial blockage, damage accumulated over decades of competitive training. 33 years after his last Mr. Olympia title, the cardiovascular strain of sustaining 185 pounds of dense muscle through years of elite competition had left its mark. That damage had been building quietly for so long that it gave no warning before it became fatal. Arnold Schwarzenegger, who spoke at Columbu's funeral, described him as his best friend, training partner, and brother, and said he had expected them to grow old together. Columbu's case makes a specific point that the sport has not adequately reckoned with. Even athletes who follow the responsible path, who moderate their drug use, maintain their health, and leave competition on their own terms, are not exempt from the long-term physiological cost of competing at that level. Doing everything right does not guarantee a different outcome. Number 3. Greg Kovacs. Greg Kovacs was not the most defined or the most decorated bodybuilder of his era, but he was, by most accounts, the largest competitive bodybuilder the sport had ever produced. In the off-season, he weighed 420 pounds. His arms measured 25 inches at rest. His chest measured 70 inches in circumference. For context, most Mr. Olympia competitors step on stage weighing between 250 and 270 pounds. Kovacs was carrying roughly 150 pounds beyond that. He never pursued the Olympia title. By his own acknowledgement, he understood that his build was beyond what even professional competition required. His stated objective was singular: to be the largest human being in the sport. He achieved that. In November 2013, Greg Kovacs collapsed at home from a massive heart attack. He was taken to hospital, but the cardiac damage was too severe. He died several days later. He was 44 years old. His wife disclosed after his death that in the months before his collapse, he had been experiencing persistent cardiovascular symptoms, chest pain, shortness of breath, and edema severe enough that walking between rooms had become difficult. Physicians had warned him on multiple occasions that his heart could not sustain the demands placed on it by maintaining 420 pounds of body mass. They advised him to reduce his weight and discontinue his cycles. They told him directly that his life was at risk. He did not stop. His identity had become inseparable from his size. Reducing his body meant losing the distinction that defined him publicly. So he continued maintaining a diet of approximately 10,000 calories a day, continuing his cycles, continuing to grow, while his heart worked to sustain a load it was never designed to carry. The autopsy findings were striking even to experienced cardiologists. His heart was so enlarged and so damaged that physicians reviewing the report noted it resembled the heart of an elderly patient with a long history of serious cardiac disease. One cardiologist stated that it appeared to belong to an 80-year-old man who had suffered multiple heart attacks over decades. Greg Kovacs wanted to be remembered as the largest bodybuilder who ever lived. That distinction stands. He died at 44. Number 2. Mohammed Benaziza. Mohammed Benaziza entered professional bodybuilding with no financial backing, no sponsors, and no institutional support. He came from Algeria in the 1980s, competing in a sport dominated by Americans and Europeans with access to established training infrastructure and coaching networks. He had none of that access. By 1990, he had earned his IFBB Pro card and was competing against the best athletes in the world. Benaziza was not the largest competitor on any stage he entered. His distinction was his conditioning. His muscle definition was extreme, visibly striated with minimal body fat and prominent vascularity. By the standards of the sport, his physique was considered elite. In October 1992, Benaziza traveled to the Netherlands to compete in the Grand Prix Netherlands. In preparation, he followed standard pre-competition protocol: aggressive water restriction and diuretic use over several days to reduce subcutaneous water and maximize muscle definition. He competed. He placed well. The crowd responded to him. Backstage after the competition, he collapsed. He began convulsing. Paramedics were called immediately. His heart was in an irregular rhythm. His organs were in acute distress. He was transported to hospital, where doctors attempted to stabilize him. On October 4, 1992, Mohammed Benaziza was pronounced dead. He was 33 years old. The autopsy identified the cause as cardiovascular collapse resulting from severe dehydration and electrolyte imbalance. The extreme reduction in fluid had thickened his blood to the point where his heart could no longer circulate it effectively and his kidneys could no longer function. His system shut down progressively and completely. The detail that defines this case is straightforward. Benaziza died following preparation methods that were and remain standard practice in professional bodybuilding. Aggressive water cutting with diuretics before competition is not an aberration. It is what athletes are coached to do. He followed that protocol, and it killed him. Following his death, Benaziza's family pursued legal action against the sport's governing federation, seeking accountability for how a competitor could die from standard pre-competition preparation. The federation's response, as reported, was that professional athletes compete with knowledge of the risks involved. Benaziza had come from nothing, built a professional career through exceptional work and determination, and reached the highest level of the sport. He died the night of a competition, as a direct consequence of preparation he had been instructed to follow. Number 1. Zyzz Shavashian. Zyzz was not just a bodybuilder, he was a cultural phenomenon that an entire generation of young men still carries with them today. Zyzz Shavashian started as a skinny, bullied kid from Australia, who decided he was tired of feeling weak. He walked into a gym and committed to transforming himself. Within a few years, he had built a physique that made him a genuine internet legend. Shredded abs, broad shoulders, and a confident, unapologetic presence that made people stop and pay attention. But it was never only about the physical transformation. It was his attitude and energy that made him impossible to ignore. Zyzz approached bodybuilding differently from the generation before him. He made it accessible, even fun. He danced shirtless at raves. He posted videos of himself flexing in random locations. He looked into the camera and told young men around the world, "We're all going to make it." Millions followed him. He became the face of an entirely new generation of fitness culture, proof that you didn't need to be a professional competitor to inspire people. You needed confidence and the willingness to be yourself. On August 5, 2011, Zyzz was on vacation in Thailand with his brother. After a long day, they went to a sauna together. His brother found him collapsed on the floor. Paramedics responded, but it was already too late. Zyzz Shavashian was 22 years old. The autopsy provided an explanation. Zyzz had been living with an undiagnosed congenital heart defect, a condition he was born with that had gone undetected throughout his life. His family had a documented history of heart problems. The fitness community has wrestled ever since with the additional factor the autopsy raised. That defect might never have proven fatal had he not been using anabolic steroids. Zyzz had openly discussed his use of performance-enhancing compounds, trenbolone and clenbuterol among them. Substances known to place significant stress on the cardiovascular system and elevate blood pressure to dangerous levels. For someone with a healthy heart, those compounds carry serious risk. For someone with an undetected structural defect, the combination created conditions that were compounding over time. The sauna introduced additional heat, dehydration, and cardiovascular stress onto an already compromised heart. The factors converged simultaneously. The young man who had told a generation "we're all going to make it" did not. What makes Zyzz's death still resonate more than a decade later is the scale of the legacy he left behind. His photos still appear in gyms around the world captioned "R.I.P. King." His message still circulates in fitness communities on every continent. His confidence and his belief that anyone could transform themselves never faded. But Zyzz never saw any of it. He never turned 30. He never married. He never had children. He never reached the life he was so visibly building. He became immortal by dying young. That is the central tragedy. 10 figures. 10 distinct stories. One outcome. Some died from pushing their bodies past the point of recovery. Some died from the psychological collapse that the sport quietly produces behind the scenes. Some died despite following every precaution available to them. And some died without ever knowing their bodies had been compromised long before they stepped onto any stage. Running through all 10 stories is the same underlying reality. Each of them believed completely and without reservation that competing was worth more than their own survival. Bodybuilding describes itself as a sport. The record raises a different question. In what sport do athletes consistently die in their 20s, 30s, and 40s? In what sport is the mortality rate this persistent and this documented? In what sport do athletes systematically damage themselves from the inside and receive applause for it? These men gave up everything to achieve a physical standard that exists only on stage. They sacrificed their organs, their mental health, their relationships, and ultimately their lives. And in the end, all of that cost them the one thing no trophy, no sponsorship, and no amount of recognition could ever return: their humanity